the tip of the iceberg is abortion, but underneath the iceberg, like the tip of the iceberg is this huge, like if you've ever seen that picture of the iceberg where it's just the top is poking out, but then underneath the water, you see how big it actually is.
Yeah.
And for me, I saw this image one time that said abortion was the tip of the iceberg, but underneath was sexual immorality. And that's where it stems from, is this idea of like, there's no value in sex anymore. It's just kind of seen as this like willy-nilly kind of thing, like just go out and do it and do it for fun. But for me, like going back to saying, like, I desire at least once a month to create life.
Yeah.
Like my desire is so strong during that one cycle of that one phase of my cycle, and it's just like, it's that way because sex was also designed, before it was designed for pleasure, it was designed to create life, and so it's just so funny to see that, like, it's not really funny, it's kind of sickening actually to see how many people are so for taking innocent lives. And like, I totally, when I was a feminist before I came to Christ and I was like deep in New Age and all that ideology, I was more on the other side. I was definitely more pro-choice, do whatever you want. But it wasn't until I came into Christ and was like born again in the spirit that I saw that this was a spiritual war happening. Like, this is so much deeper, right? And that's why I was talking kind of about like the iceberg is like, it's just, the abortion is just the tip. It's a spiritual war that's happening. And child sacrifice has been done for thousands of years. This is just like it. Like, there's so many, like, this is just another form of child sacrifice, and it's just being normalized by our society. And, but it starts with the sexual immorality, and there's like pills now to just like, to end a child's life. And people aren't even seeing children as children. They're just seeing them as like parasites. And it's just like so wrong because it's stemming from this, it's coming from the enemy. Like, it's just as simple as that. Like, this ideology is coming from the enemy. It's just, it's like, it's hard to talk about too, because like, it's not like I want to condemn anyone. I'm not here to condemn anyone, because I know that especially people that have had abortions, they feel this sense of like, it's traumatic. It's like, it's not something that's easy to do. But at the same time, it's no longer about you, but people, we just live in this.
Is like, even people who don't believe in the Bible, once again, if you've had an abortion, the pain that will forever live in your heart because of that. Like, you will always feel the loss of that child, and God can redeem that, like God can redeem that. And when you do come into his family and his kingdom, that child is with him in heaven and they're okay. And you're going to see them again one day. But before you realize that, it's like, you don't know until you know, And so there's so many women that have maybe gotten an abortion and then years later came to Christ and then realized what they did in the spiritual war that they were involved in, and they didn't even know.
Yes. Amen. And it's, there's no condemnation. There's always forgiveness for those things too. And that's such a good point to make, because, that's just like such a challenging thing to go through. Basically it's just like normalized in our society and our culture because of the way that most women like choose to live their lives. And it just takes like the most vulnerable, one of the most vulnerable aspects of our society, and just treats it like there's no protection. As a mother, honestly, I'm not even a mother yet, but I am also a aunt, and I'm actually going to have a niece born any day now. And just the idea that like, we should be protected. Like, as women, we should naturally be drawn to protect children. Like, that's our instinct. That's something God gave us, to take care of children and to protect them. And there's just so many ways that our society is destroying children, making them irrelevant, making them, it's really sickening, and it's really hard to talk about because it's such a dark thing that's happening. Just like the sex trafficking and all these different things that are happening to our children. And it's because it's also comes back to this idea of feminism, and women have lost this desire to nurture and nourish children and to raise them in a safe place. And to, when we are staying home with our children, we're protecting them. We're building them up in the kingdom. We're giving them a really solid, strong foundation so that they aren't led astray by the world. And the world will lead you astray. It definitely led me astray, and it
Yeah,
led me so much sin. And I didn't even know. I didn't even know I was participating in sin. I didn't even believe that sin was real. Um,
me
and
too.
so, yeah, and like that's where it stems from, in my opinion, is just like the sexual immorality and people needing to take accountability for that, like women really needing to step up and take accountability. It's really odd, is like, this is kind of strange, but okay, so when I was in New Age and I would talk about, like, I was maybe more feminist and I was, had like a vegetarian diet and I was, just saying all these feminist kind of things. This person was following me and she never said anything to me. But then when I started coming on and like I was born again in the spirit and I was a born again Christian and I was sharing my faith online and I was sharing my beliefs online. And after Roe versus Wade got overturned this past year, which I just think is so cool, like that
Mm.
we live a time when that happened, because that was like such a huge thing for people,
Yeah,
and like to be on I was just seeing it from a completely different perspective, because like I said before, I didn't really care. It's like, do what you want, and that's goes back to that quote from
spirituality. Yeah.
yeah, like, do what you want, it doesn't affect me. But this person came into my DMs and she was like really upset and wanted to argue with me about abortion and that Christians shouldn't have their opinion and that we shouldn't vote on things based on our religious beliefs. And it's like, that's literally what Christians were intended to do, is to like
Yeah.
be set up and to like live our lives based on the reflection of God's character, and to do things that honor and glorify him.
Yeah,
And
it's
so she
not
was like,
from any part of our living being. It's integrated into everything.
yeah, yeah, and like, you're telling me I shouldn't vote just because I'm a Christian? Like, absolutely not. I should vote even more because I'm a Christian. But anyway, so it was just very weird to see that she was for it. Obviously, she was more pro-choice. And then maybe it was even like a few weeks or a few months later, she had also come into my DMs again when I had posted about veganism. And I just want to share this here because the contrast was, she was all for killing children in the womb, but she was against killing animals. And
Mm,
it's just like, what have we gotten? We've gotten so far away that we care more about animals than we do about children. Like, the same group that is for abortion is also against killing innocent animals.
yeah.
It's like, to me, that was just so backwards. When I made that connection, I was just like, that is so mind blowing to me that we've gotten that far, that
Yeah,
we care so preciously for an animal, but we don't care that preciously for a human being. Like, that
it
was just like,
makes no sense.
yeah, it's like so backwards. And so I don't know, it's just hard, it's just challenging to live as a Christian in this society and culture today, because it's just the complete opposite. Everything is backwards. But to me, I'm just like, the darker things get, the brighter the light of Christ is going to shine and come forth. And
I watched
yeah.
a video actually. So I had a testimony on here where I think you probably saw it on my Instagram story, but somebody said something very bold about the Catholic Church, and so I got a lot of flack about that, where people were commenting things about Catholicism and whatever, and it led me on this journey of watching Catholic videos, like you said in the beginning, being teachable. I'm open to being teachable. So I started watching some of these Catholic testimonies. At the end of the day, if we all love Jesus and can agree on Jesus, like, that's really the main thing, I think. But anyways, this lady was talking about this study that was done with monkeys, where some scientist hypothesized that if you gave the monkeys birth control, that they would eventually not feel any desire to like even have sex anymore, and that then eventually the male monkeys would start mating with male monkeys, and it would just be like utter chaos. And so she was like, and then they made that study was like years and years ago, and she's like, now that's exactly what you see happening in the world, is like. And so I don't know if the Catholic Church doesn't believe in birth control altogether. I don't know entirely, but that was kind of the theory, is that if you start allowing birth control to be a thing, then the desire, like the male desire to have sex with a woman and procreate, is going to eventually go away, and then they're going to begin sleeping with each other. And you literally see that in humanity and in our culture now.
For sure, and yeah, birth control really is so toxic for women, and I saw this thing once that birth control was created to make women more like men. Hello, that's literally like the feminist movement. It's
Yep.
taking and trying to bring them equal to men because society and culture and the people in power positions, they want us just to make money for them. They don't want us in the home. They don't want us nurturing our husbands and nourishing our children and building a healthy society. They want us away from the home. They want us working and literally killing ourselves spiritually,
Yep.
so that there is chaos and disorder. And then we cling to them. We look to them as our savior, that
Yeah.
they're going to be the that are going to like help us and take care of us. But really, they're the ones that want to control us, right? So God doesn't want to control us, but the people of this world that are in power positions do because they're being led by Satan, and Satan wants to control. If you feel controlled in any sense of way, those are just like strings, like you're just a puppet in some form to the enemy, right? And it's like Jesus is that chain breaker. He cuts those strings and sets you free, and you are free indeed. And
So glad
it,
that you said that, because people will be like, who is they and why do these humans care to do that?
yeah,
It's not about the humans, it's about the spiritual war and the
yeah,
spiritual influence behind what they're doing.
exactly. Yes, because at the top of that is like it's not the people in power; it's Satan that's controlling them.
Yeah.
And so that's also too why a lot of people feel out of control, and they're just seeking, they're like clinging to the world to give them the sense of security and safety, and it just doesn't. It's you're always, that's the thing too, is because in the feminist movement and even like with things like abortion, it's just like this sense of like freedom. Oh, it's like this sexual liberation that I'm free because I can do whatever I want with my body. It's just like, but there are spiritual consequences to
Yeah.
these actions, and people don't always see. They're not looking to the spirit. They're not looking, and if they are looking to the spirit, they're looking to the false spirit, the false light, the antichrist, the new age movement with all these different things, and they're seeking the wrong, because all these demons too that have infiltrated people's minds and bodies and actions, because when you see people like truly like standing up and like saying these absurd things and like going off, and like people that are so triggered, like pro choice people, like if you see them and they're just like going off, this is what demonic oppression looks like.
Yeah.
These are demons out of these people, like they like want to attack human life, like they come to steal and kill and destroy. That's what Satan does, and what is that?
Utter chaos.
Abortion, yeah, abortion is stealing and killing and destroying a soul, like it's destroying a human life, and that's what the enemy wants. And so if you're for that, like obviously like you're just being influenced by the enemy, but it looks like freedom, and he wants to make you think like that this is the movement, this is the way, and it's not the way. Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life.
I have a friend who inspires me so much on this because so my friend, she was in this relationship with this guy. It was a really toxic relationship and they ended up breaking up. So she moves back home and then a few weeks later finds out she's pregnant. And I think her mom actually came out to her at that point and told her like, "Listen, like I had abortions before, like if you need to make this choice, that's okay and I would support you." It's not a very God-centered home by any means. Um and she was like, "You know what? No, like I'm going to keep this baby." And she's kind of a baby Christian in the beginning of reading her Bible and in the beginning of learning to trust God. And she went through with the pregnancy, and it was terrible with the baby daddy. Like he wasn't there, he didn't support her, he just added stress and chaos. And she has the baby now, and it's the same thing. Like he doesn't pay any child support or anything like this. Like she's figuring it out. But every time I FaceTime her, she has this baby and she's like, "This baby was my angel. He saved my life." Like it might not have made sense, like she didn't have it all figured out. She didn't have the job or the husband or the home or anything, but this life that was given to her was a blessing, and she knows that, and she's so grateful every day that she chose to keep him.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And even when like maybe because that child was born, like, for example, I was also born like out of wedlock. The child was born out of sin, but God can use that child for his glory. And he is doing that with her. So that's so beautiful too. Like, he can use those children. I can even speak from my own experience. Like, my parents weren't married. Like, my parents were not ready to have children, and I could have definitely been aborted. Like, and I see these things too, where it's like, oh well, that child is just going to suffer if it grows up in these certain homes. I suffered a lot.
Yeah.
I a lot of pain, a lot of trauma. Does that mean I didn't deserve to have a life? Absolutely not. It made me who I am today. It built my character, and it's like actually that life. And I was talking to God about this. I was just talking to Jesus, and I was just feeling him like completely restoring my life. And he showed me that, like, the reason he made my heart the way it was, like, because I was just thinking about the way I grew up, and my heart was very soft, very tender. I've always been very loving, very gentle, very caring. And I know that's because God shaped my heart to be that way. But because I grew up in this bloodline that was very harsh, he knew I was going to face abuse. He knew I was going to face neglect. He knew I was going to face all these things, and still he created me. And I was like, why, God? Why? And he was like, because I was going to use those things to bring you back to me. I always knew that you were going to come back to me, and I was going to use those things because what if, like, I never experienced those things? What if my life was perfect? I may have never came to God. I may have never gave him the time of day because I had everything I ever wanted and desired, And that's the thing, is like, we experience hardship and we experience those things in life, and it does lead us closer to God because we have to lean on him instead of our own understanding, And so I just hate that argument that says, well, that child's going to grow up to suffer. And it's just like, some of the greatest people in our society, in our culture, grew up with the crappiest, most unwell homes with the most unstable parents, and grew into be great leaders, people that, have also, like, changed the world too. So to just say that, like, we should take away a life because it's going to suffer, absolutely not. Suffering is a part of the human condition, and God can use suffering for his glory too, because that's just his character, and he reveals that in what he does in people's lives.